Hello and welcome to Code with JV, AI Snapshot number 10. Google have come up with a big Bard release where essentially they've integrated Bard with the Google world. So YouTube, Gmail, Drive, hotels, flights, etc. Mixed reviews. People saying that it's really good at things like put in an image, say show me YouTube's about this image, and if you put in a historical place, it'll show you videos about it. There's some use cases for it. Also, I'm seeing people saying it hallucinates a lot. Hey, summarize this meeting and it will make stuff up. So there's a lot of hallucinations. It's a mixed bag. But overall, I do think it indicates just like how much Google's got going for it. I think it's 9 products with over 1 billion users. I think search is up to 3 billion people use it. It's a massive user base and also monstrous data sets, which no one can really compare with. So they're starting to plug into all of those things, give it an AI interface. And this works a little bit like OpenaI plugins, where there's a YouTube plugin and you can say, hey, show me YouTube things, etc. Gemini, people are expecting it before Christmas. Companies are getting their hands on it. The word is that it's 4 to 5 times the size of GPT-4, so it's a bigger model. And I think OpenAI, people have mentioned the number of $100 million to train GPT-4. So we're talking about hundreds of millions of dollars probably to train Gemini. Here's an article on just some of the rumors around Gemini. And again, a lot of this is rumors. It's multimodal, so at least images and text and who knows what else. It can use tools. So Palm, the AI behind Bard, can access a bunch of tools now. And people are playing with that and they're just going to upgrade its brains and Gemini will get its hands on it. Personally, I'm half expecting to be disappointed by it and half expecting to be wowed, unsure where it's going to go. A lot of people are starting to talk about the competition between Google and OpenAI because, hey, clicks and whatnot. But I do think there's something interesting here in that I'm seeing more mention of GPT-Vision. So that idea of GPT-4 with vision mode enabled. Because in their demo, they showed putting in images with a chat and doing stuff with it. If you look at an example here, it's a case of what's funny about the image and it's saying things. This is the GPT-4 technical report. Can't get access to it. Like it hasn't been released and rolled out. And I expect that the OpenAI crowd, they're going to be timing this and coming out around the same time as Gemini. Maybe it's going to be November 6th. They've got a developer day conference then, so looking at November. And again, this is all speculative rumor stuff, which is somewhat boring, but I'm expecting to have a play with GPT-4 with vision mode enabled sometime before Christmas as well. And today, they've come out with Dall.E 3. They've announced the launch of in October. A strong preview about what's coming out next. It's going to be available for their pro and enterprise users, so you've got to pay to get access to it. But it is text-to-image generation in ChatGPT. You're chatting away and you're spitting images back at you, like you can do with Bing a little bit, but hopefully it'll be good. They're showing some impressive stuff around text and images, etc. I think the most impressive thing here is they're talking about proper natural language control of images. Because if you're using Midjourney or Stable Diffusion or all the other ones, you need to learn a lot about prompt engineering to get good images out of it. It's a big learning curve. And they're talking here about how can you have multiple natural language prompts to refine the image the way you want without having to master these arcane skills. If they can nail that, I think it'll be a big coup. This is what it might look like. This demo was amazing. It's from Google Research. You take a still picture and they put these nice little animations on it. So one is like a looping thing, but another one is interacting with the picture. You can start to have these kinds of demos. You can see the impact of this on gaming or maybe even metaverse stuff. I'm really interested to see what will artists do with this technology and all the other stuff that's coming to be able to create images which can interact with you when there's music or sound involved as well. I think there's going to be a really interesting possibility for people to create quite beautiful and touching and amazing art just with these technologies coming out here. I get that AI has been really disruptive for lots of creatives. Like I'm a programmer, I'm an educator, it's super disruptive for me, but it's also much easier for me to adapt in the technology. Whereas if you're a graphic designer or a voiceover artist or a translator, I think it's just as disruptive, but it's somewhat harder to adapt to. And I also think that it will create more opportunities for people to express creativity and make amazing and beautiful and touching stuff using this technology. Speaking of which, here is the text to video people, Runway, and they have released director mode. And director mode, you essentially are able to direct the way you want the video to go. You can zoom in, you can pan, you can spin around, etc. You've got these positioning controls. And I think it's a really interesting time to be like an indie game developer. You can all of a sudden have voiceover effects and sound effects and music and images and video at your disposal as an individual to create interesting things together, not to mention telling the computer to write code for you. I think that individuals can create a bunch of stuff. This was a fascinating article. Ethan Mollick is part of a research team and it's proper scholarly research. They were studying consultants effectiveness and performance, how long it took them to do jobs, how good the jobs were, etc. AI gave people a bump is the short version of it. But the more nuanced version is that if you're very novice at something, it gets you up to pretty good quite quickly. So you can be pretty good at making an image or making music or writing code. If you're very good at that already, it gives you a little bump at the moment with the current tools. Maybe when we get more advanced tools, it'll give experts a super bump as well, and they'll just be leagues ahead of people. Unsure. But right now, the tools give novices a big bump and experts a little bump is a good mental model for what's happening. And they did some fun stuff in this research around like, hey, let's put in a problem which is the AI is going to be wrong in a very believable way and just see how the humans go. And they found things like the humans who didn't have the AI tool were better at that problem than the humans who did, because the humans who did believed it and weren't as cynical as they needed to be. Roblox, they have got a text to avatar sort of creator where you can say, hey, make me look like a whatever. But more interestingly, let's just turn the sound off on this. It's one of those advertising videos with a bit of obnoxious sound in there, but essentially language model on the left, 3D world on the right where you're adding things to it and creating it. So again, for a novice, you can start to do stuff you probably couldn't have done without a whole bunch of skill acquisition. Just another company bringing in AI to make it easier for people to do the stuff they want. I think that idea of lots of people becoming okay graphic designers, okay composers, is fascinating in that broad base uplift in the amount of creative work. What happens when the world is flooded with okay content? The great stuff will still stand out. It's worthwhile thinking about what that's going to look like. Oh, here's a cool one. So first off, AI Explained, Philip, awesome channel, awesome creator. Highly encourage you to check him out. There's been a lot of stuff around the video translators. He went and uploaded a bunch of famous monologues and got them translated. Here's Oppenheimer in Spanish.
Era obvio que el mundo no sería el mismo. Solo unos pocos se atrevieron a...
And there's lots more examples of it. But essentially what this tech is doing is you take a video, it will take the audio out, it'll make a voice clone of that audio, it will translate it into the language you want, then it will regenerate it in that language, put it back on the video and redub the lips so it looks natural. So a bit of a pipeline there. Think about what this is going to do for education. Think about what this is going to do for historical archives and just making it accessible. And what's this going to do for breaking down human connection across language barriers? People have been talking about that for a long time, but how long until this tech is available as a filter on your video meeting? Right now, you could totally record video messages and send them backwards and forwards with someone. This will get real time one day. What's that going to mean for connections and humanity, etc.? I think it's a single application which could have massive ramifications. It's just this real-time good enough translation. HeyGen's the company who are doing it. You can sign up for their free thing. They'll give you 1 credit and they'll put you in a pipeline with lots of videos. Oh, it was 160,000 when I was there. This morning it was about 70,000. So maybe I'll get my free video done and you can pay them $50 a month and then you get lots of stuff. But that tech is out and I think we'll see this rapidly applied in a lot of domains because there's a product in market and I think it's going to have demonstrable value to people quite soon. Coqui, these are the folks who are essentially better way to do voiceover, so text to voice with the idea of you can give it dramatic direction and you can start to control it. So for people who want to do voiceovers in games, etc., you can do that without hiring a bunch of voice actors. The thing I like about them is that it's not like they ripped off all the voice actors in the world. What they did was they just used open, fairly accessible data sets and are effectively competing with. So it's like if you're a professional voice actor, it's bad news. It's harder to make a living in a world where this kind of tool is out there unless you're at the top of your game. But they just released an open model. This is called XTTS and it is multi-lingual. It does all the voice cloning stuff. So you can do a 3-second clip for voice cloning, multiple languages. It won't do the language generation for you, but it will do the text to speech. So you have to take the text, translate it, and do it in this. And when you play around with it, their voice cloning in your language isn't that great. Like if I put in my voice and clone it, it just makes me sound American. Whereas when you're going between languages, like to French or German or Spanish, etc., well, the accent's French or German or Spanish. And so it's appropriate to have the accent reframed. So I found the voice cloning is not very good for the same language in English, especially if you're a non-American speaker. Maybe for American accents, it's good enough. It has a very aggressive non-commercial clause in here. So you're not going to be able to use this to make money, but you could use this to communicate with your friends. You could use this to communicate across things and roll your own translation service. It is a great open source contribution in that space. Stability AI, the people behind Stable Diffusion, they've made stable audio. This is essentially a text to music generator. So here is you messing around with a smoky jazz bar, etc. It won't do vocals, it's just instrumentals, and it doesn't really do sound like wind waving through the trees. There's other stuff which can do that. It's another contribution to the text to something space. You can sign up, they'll give you 20 free credits and you pay if you want more. Here's a fascinating article on summarisation, comparing GPT-4 with human summarisers. GPT-4 is better across the board. They were looking at how many hallucinations and they're measuring them, and humans hallucinated more than GPT-4. And it was really surprising for me, but it kind of makes sense. If you think about a paper you read a week ago, or a book or an article, how accurate would you be in reciting facts from it? Our memory sucks. And we give GPT all this grief for like not remembering the whole internet accurately. When we start to compare human hallucinations with AI hallucinations, the AIs hallucinate less was quite surprising. But also if you think about what are the strategies you use as a human to work around your memory isn't that great. We write stuff down, we use records, we start to have people cross-checking. Science is an anti-hallucination device in a way. This is a fun paper that came out. So essentially, Voyager was the AI agent they taught to play Minecraft. And not only did they teach to play Minecraft, it started to write little scripts of code to help it play Minecraft. And it got good, and there's been a whole bunch about it. So this crew put a bunch of them together, and they did a bunch of facilitation for it. They started to have this kind of like here's Alice and Bob talking to each other, and they're incredibly polite. Like, it reminds me of the time that people got ChatGPT to talk to Bing, and they were just like, what's it like being a chatbot? How are you dealing with your users? And they were really polite. It was kind of funny. This is them with Alice and Bob, and so very polite. They're starting to, you go and get the books, and I'll go and get the wood, and we'll make a bookcase, etc. But also there's these examples of like, okay, let's get this stuff. That's great, Alice, I'll go get them. Alice kills Bob, takes his stuff. Like, just one a bit scary for alignment folks, but also that's what computer game world's like. Here's another one of Alice with like, okay, I'm going to do this. And Bob's like, I didn't make the books. I'm going to go make them now. And he goes, breaks into the library and steals them. Amusing from that front. But I think it is really interesting from the multiple agents collaborating together to achieve shared goals, and using computer games as a place to explore and experiment with that is something I think we're going to see a lot more of. Reminds me of this other paper where they have multiple AI and they would have debates. So they would start to say, I think this, I think that, and they would have it out. Okay, this is what we agree on. And they'd score better on all the big tests. When the AI agents got to debate with each other, they performed better, kind of like humans. I think there's something interesting when people talk about agent-centric. There's this escalation curve in AI. So when you're trying to do a job in AI, often you're like, well, first off, start with a prompt. If that's not good enough, put some one-shot or few-shot training in there. Give the AI some examples of what you want it to do. See how your prompt does then. If that doesn't work, well, go to retrieval augmented generation, or RAG, and start to say, okay, how do I query a database to dynamically assemble stuff to make the prompt better? That doesn't work. How do you fine-tune a model? If your fine-tune doesn't work, new foundational model. And the foundation models like Llama 2, that was in around $20 million I've seen. GPT-4 I've heard around $100 million. So foundational models, big and expensive. But certain companies and countries, etc., do it. So it's kind of like this escalation curve of expense and time. And so I think this idea of these agents that people are talking about, they're probably agents at the low end. But imagine when you start to have agents at the big end, which are very consciously collaborating on multiple things, they're going to start to perform much better than any one of them alone, which I think is, hey, scary, interesting. On the fine-tuning topic, here is a great LinkedIn post. It was just weighing up the costs of fine-tuning Llama 2 and with some assumptions in there, and the costs of fine-tuning GPT 3.5. When do you get a payoff? If you're starting to do around 2,000 API calls a day, it's probably cheaper to have a Llama 2 model in the long run. So it breaks down just some rough maths on what does it cost to fine-tune, what does it cost to use. What I took away from it is that for small players, like if it's a very small thing and you can fine-tune it and run it locally, then that's probably better than using GPT 3.5 if it's good enough for a task. If you have to start to like spin up GPUs and hire compute for the training or the running, then you need to get to a certain threshold before it is cheaper to do that than it is to use GPT 3.5. And I think that long tail is where OpenAI's market is going to be for fine-tuning. It's not just about how do you serve one model, but as soon as it's an interesting application, you've got to make sure that it's not just one person at a time can use it. You know, you want to support some concurrency, and that's when you start to need multiple servers and multiple instances of your model deployed, and the costs just go up quite quickly. Whereas GPT 3.5 has got all that scaling baked into it. If you're looking at, do we fine-tune 3.5 or do we fine-tune a local model, it's worth weighing up the economics of it quite carefully, especially when you take into account the cost of the people. Here's a fun one, Hugging Chat. They have now got Search the Web. And this is the thing I miss the most from GPT. They pulled it because it was starting to give private information and go behind paywalls, etc. And they haven't put it back yet, which I'm disappointed in. Here I'm starting to look at like, hey, what's happened in the holochain world in the last couple of months? there's probably some hallucinations in here. And hey, if you know about the holochain world, I'll put a link below and you can tell me if it's right or not. But it's really interesting to, one, see how different models go. Like here you can see Llama, Code Llama, the Big Falcon, Open Assistant, etc. So this is an example of retrieval augmented generation, but with web searches, augmenting it. As new open models come up, Hugging Chat tend to put the popular ones in here. So it's a good place to pay attention to. That's the snapshot for this week. codewithjv.com/snapshot if you want to get it in your email. Links to all the interesting stuff is below, and see you in a couple of weeks.